My mom, in her final days, regretted giving birth to me. This wholesome story deserves a like, so hit that like button and subscribe while we get into the story. My mom said she wished she aborted me, then asked me to forgive her while dying. That was the first thing she said to me in over 2 years. No, hi. No, how are you? Just that. I had walked into the hospital room expecting awkward silence. What I got was worse. She was hooked up to machines, eyes sunken, face pale, mouth dry. She looked smaller than I remembered. I stood there, not sure what to say or do. She reached out with one trembling hand, barely able to lift it, grabbed my wrist, and said, I should have ended it when I had the chance. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her. She must have thought I'd react, get angry, break down, say something dramatic. But there was nothing left to react with. This wasn't some big reveal. It was confirmation. The final stamp on a life I already lived. Growing up, I always knew something was off. My sister Emily got the good side of mom. The soft hugs, the birthday parties, the home-cooked meals, the talks about life. I got lists of chores, cold looks, and silence. If I spoke too loud, I was rude. If I stayed quiet, I was arrogant. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I didn't, I was soulless. When I spilled juice at 5, she screamed so hard I peed my pants. She made me stand in the corner for an hour, then told me I smelled like failure. Emily watched the whole thing and didn't say a word. I wasn't beaten. She was smarter than that. I wasn't locked up or starved. It wasn't what people think of when they hear abuse. It was quieter, colder, worse. I learned to exist without making noise, to stay invisible unless something needed cleaning or fixing. If I did everything right, maybe she'd say thank you. She never did. When I was 9, I made her breakfast, burnt the toast a little. She threw the whole tray into the sink and said, You're not good at anything, are you? I stopped trying after that. Teachers would call home and say I was quiet, smart, respectful. Mom would scoff and say, He's fooling you. He's manipulative. When Dad was around, things were better. But he worked long hours and traveled a lot. He'd come home tired and distracted. Mom would say things like, He lied again at school, or he broke another plate. And Dad always believed her. He died when I was 16. Heart attack. Fast. Brutal. He never knew the truth. Never saw it. After that, things got worse. She didn't even pretend anymore. Emily was the only one she talked to. I was just there. When I turned 18, I left. Moved to another city. Didn't call. Didn't write. I figured I was done. 2 years passed. Then Emily called and said Mom was dying. Stage for liver cancer. Not long left. I didn't want to go. Emily said, Please. For me. So I went. I sat next to her bed, hands in my lap, waiting. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Maybe for her to say something. Maybe for her to admit something. Anything. Instead, she grabbed my wrist and said that I should have ended it when I had the chance. I didn't speak. She looked at me like I was a stranger, then said, Your life is hell. I made it that way. I should have never had you. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just a weird, detached calm. Like we were talking about someone else. Emily walked in 5 minutes later and sat on the other side of the bed like nothing happened. Like Mom hadn't just said the most brutal thing a parent can say. I didn't tell her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor of Mom's old bedroom, just staring at her dresser. It was still the same one from my childhood. Same chipped handle. Same crooked drawer. I opened it. Bottom drawer, shoved in the back, was an envelope. No stamp. No name on the front. I opened it without thinking. Inside was a folded letter. Handwritten. I never told him. He thinks the baby is his. But it was yours. I didn't know how to live with that. So I took it out on him. I read it 3 times. Then everything hit me. She wasn't talking about Emily. She was talking about me. I sat on the floor for a long time holding that letter. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt numb. Everything suddenly made too much sense. It explained the way she looked at me. The way she never hugged me. The way she could laugh with Emily and ignore me like I wasn't even there. I wasn't just unwanted. I was a mistake she never confessed to. I was a secret. And the man who raised me, the one I called Dad, the one I always thought was just disappointed in me, he had no idea. He died thinking I was his. He sat through my school plays, bought me birthday gifts, drove me to college visits. And all of it was built on a lie. He tried. He really did. I thought he just didn't like me. But now I think he didn't know how to connect with me because she never let him. Every time I did something wrong, she'd blame it on me being too much like her ex. She said it once when she thought I couldn't hear. He's not like Emily. He's just like him. I used to think him meant Dad. It didn't. I thought about confronting her right then. Marching into her hospital room. Showing her the letter. Asking her who he was. Where he was. Why she never told anyone. But when I stood up, my legs wouldn't move. What was I even hoping to get? Closure? She already told me I was a regret. What more was there? I stayed up all night. I watched the sun rise over the blinds. Watched the nurse do her morning check. Mom slept through it. Her breath was thin and uneven. I walked back in, sat in the chair beside her, and stared at her face. I didn't feel hate. Not even anger. Just tired. When she opened her eyes again, she stared at me like I was a painting she hadn't looked at in years. She said, You have his eyes. I didn't reply. She kept looking. Then said, I couldn't tell him. He would have left. I asked. So you punished me instead? Her lips twitched. Maybe a smirk. Maybe just a reflex. I didn't mean to, she said. I asked, who was he? She didn't answer. Just looked at the ceiling. I asked again. Still nothing. Then she whispered, he didn't want kids. It wasn't an answer, but it was enough. Some man. Probably a fling. Probably married. Left her behind, or never knew. And instead of owning up to it, she buried it. And buried me with it. Emily walked in around noon. She brought coffee. Sat down. Acted normal. Talked about the funeral arrangements, hospice care, medical stuff. I couldn't listen. I finally told her. I said, Emily, Mom isn't my mom. Not really. She looked confused. I handed her the letter. She read it slowly, quietly. Then again. Then she asked, you think it's about you? I didn't answer. She looked at Mom, still half asleep in the bed. Then whispered, I always thought something was off. I said, she hated me. Emily nodded slowly. Then said, she didn't treat you the same. I used to think maybe you reminded her of Dad, or maybe she had postpartum depression. I didn't know it was like that. I said, I was a walking lie. She didn't argue. Just sat there. Then she said something I didn't expect. I'm sorry. I asked, for what? She said, for not seeing it. For pretending everything was okay. I knew you were treated differently. I just ignored it. I didn't say anything. I didn't need her apology. But it was the first real one I ever got. We left the hospital that evening. I didn't go home. I went back to Mom's house. The house I grew up in. I unlocked the front door and stood in the hallway for 10 minutes. Just listening to the silence. Everything was exactly the same. Same photo frames on the wall. Same smell. Same shoes by the door. Like she was going to walk out of the bathroom and tell me to take the trash out. I went to her bedroom. Opened her closet. More letters. Some to Jay. Some never finished. One said, I see him and I feel sick. Another said, I thought raising him would make the guilt go away. One just said, he doesn't know? No one knows. I'm sorry. I read every single one. They were all about me. After I read the last letter, I sat on her bed and just stared at the wall. The walls were covered in pictures of Emily. Baby photos, school awards, college graduation, family holidays. She was everywhere. I was in 2 of them. Both group shots. Both in the background. I remember both moments clearly. In one, I was 15. Dad had just told me to smile for once. In the other, I was 12. I'd just gotten yelled at that morning for ruining the mood because I spilled orange juice on my shirt. Every photo was proof. Proof that I was never the main character in my own home. She tried to erase me before I was even born, then tried to shrink me smaller and smaller until there was nothing left. I spent the next hour packing everything she owned into boxes. Not for memories. Not for grief. Just to get it over with. I left the letters on the bed. Part of me wanted to burn them. Another part wanted Emily to read them too. I ended up locking them in a file box and putting it in the trunk of my car. On the drive back to my apartment, I kept thinking about what to do. Should I tell the rest of the family? Should I try to find him, Jay? Should I pretend like none of it happened? I didn't know. I called Emily that night. Asked if she was okay. She said she was still processing it all. She sounded more sad than surprised. She wasn't well, she said. None of us knew how unwell. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, do you think she ever loved me? The silence on the other end said more than words. Eventually, she said, I think she wanted to, but she couldn't. It was the softest way to say no. Mom spent her final weeks in hospice. Emily visited every day. I visited twice. The first time, she was asleep the whole time. The second, she was awake. When I walked in, she looked surprised to see me. Her voice was weaker than before. Barely there. You came back. I nodded. Why? I sat down. Took the letter out of my jacket pocket. Her eyes locked on it. She didn't ask what it was. I held it up and said, I know. She looked down. No tears. No shock. Just quiet acceptance. I thought you might find it, she said. I kept it because I couldn't live with it. But I couldn't throw it away either. I asked, who was he? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, someone I worked with. He was married. I didn't know I was pregnant until it was too late. Does he know? She shook her head. I never told him. I didn't want to ruin his life. So you ruined mine instead? She winced. Not physically, emotionally. You don't understand, she whispered. Then explain it to me. She took a deep breath, like it hurt. I thought if I treated you like my own, I'd forget how you got here. But I couldn't. Every time I saw you, I saw the moment I lost everything. I asked, so what was I to you? She said nothing. So I asked again. What was I? Her eyes welled up. A reminder. A nurse stepped in, checked her looked at me with a polite nod. I waited until she left. Then I said, you should have told Dad. He loved you, she said. Yeah, I replied. And he never knew why you didn't. Her breathing slowed a bit. Her voice barely audible. I did love you. In my own way. I said, no, you didn't. And that's okay. I survived anyway. She looked at me like she wanted to say more. But instead, she closed her eyes. I sat there for another hour, watching her sleep. I didn't hold her hand. I didn't say goodbye. I just sat. When I left, I didn't look back. She died the next morning. Emily was there when it happened. I wasn't. She called me crying. Said Mom passed in her sleep. I said, okay. Nothing else. I didn't ask what her last words were. I didn't want to know. We planned a small funeral. Closed casket. Simple. Cheap. There weren't many people. A couple of co-workers from her old job. Some neighbors. One woman came up to me afterward and said, your mother always spoke so proudly of you. I didn't respond. Proud of what? My ability to disappear in plain sight? After the service, Emily and I stood by the casket. She cried. I didn't. She asked me, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. I wasn't lying. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anything. Just empty in a way that didn't hurt anymore. I drove home that night with the letters still in my trunk. I kept telling myself I'd burn them. Get rid of it all. But something stopped me. It wasn't attachment. It wasn't forgiveness. It was proof. Proof that I didn't imagine it. That I didn't make it all up in my head. That the coldness wasn't just tough love or her being tired. It was real. A few weeks later, I got a message on Facebook. Someone named Jonathan. Said he used to work with my mom in the early 90s. Said he saw her obituary in the paper. He asked if she ever mentioned him. The name felt familiar. I checked the letters. One of them was signed, J. I didn't reply. I stared at his profile picture for an hour. He looked like me. Same jawline. Same nose. I closed the tab and never opened it again. I didn't want to start another story built on lies. I didn't want to ask questions he didn't know he had answers for. He had his life. I had mine. And mine was finally mine. Emily and I talk more now. Not a lot, but more. She sends me old photos sometimes. We don't talk about Mom. She once asked me if I ever felt anything at the end. I told her the truth. Relief. It's been over a year now. I moved to another city. Got a small apartment. Quiet street. No memories in the walls. I finally started going to therapy. The first session, the therapist asked, tell me about your childhood. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Just because I didn't know where to start. I handed her one of the letters. Let her read it. She didn't say anything dramatic. Just nodded. Wrote something down. Then asked, what do you want to do with your life now? I said, something that's mine. No more living as someone's secret. Someone's guilt. Someone's burden. Just me. I don't think I'll ever visit her grave. There's nothing there for me. She took everything she was going to take. And the one thing she gave me? Truth. Ugly, late, and almost useless. But still, truth. The last thing I did before leaving my old city was drive back to that hill behind our childhood home. We used to walk there when I was a kid. Back when I still believed she cared. I brought her ashes. Emily didn't want them. I stood there for a long time. Not thinking. Not mourning. Just breathing. Then I scattered them and said one thing out loud. Not for her. For me. You didn't fail me. You failed yourself. Then I walked away. This was a wild story. Now make sure you don't forget to comment your thoughts and opinions, and I will see you in the next.